This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unified Purpose. You guys know what we do in this podcast. It is a place where we talk about inspiring tales of compassion, resilience, and community spirit. And I'm your host, Daniela. I'm Penji's partnership coordinator. And today, our very special guest is Holly Wade from the National Federation of Independent Business from Louisiana. Hi, Holly. How are you?
Good. And actually, I'm in Washington, D.C., and so I'm here in the swampland of the capital.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never been to Washington. Is it nice?
It's humid. It's nice. It is swampy-like weather conditions right now. I feel always bad for the tourists that come through in the dead of summer because it is a sweaty, humid mess. But it's a great place to visit. It's a great place to live. So I've enjoyed living here for about 25 years.
Awesome. Wow. The only reason that I have ever wanted to go to Washington, and I think I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if it's like the state of Washington. But I've always wanted to go to Forks. I don't know.
Yes.
That's the little town from Twilight.
Yeah.
I'm not American, and I'm not 100% sure because people always tell me Forks is in like near Washington, but I know that Washington is the state, and I know that Washington, D.C. is a city that is not in the state of Washington. So I'm not sure where Forks is.
So Forks, and I know both. I live in Washington, D.C., so on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, capital, the state of Washington, the capital Olympia, but the main city, Seattle. I went to University of Washington, which is in Seattle. And Forks, I knew a friend that I met in college, and she was from Forks, and so I heard all about it before the Twilight series. That was after my time. I'm an old Gen Xer, but she used to tell me about the logging community and how pretty it was, but how kind of weird and strange Forks is. But then it blew up and it turned into this whole big thing with Twilight, and now there's tourism that goes through there, and it's very pretty. It's out on the peninsula of the state of Washington.
Okay, so totally far away from where you are.
All the way on the other side.
I still want to go. Thank you for that, though. It's great information to have, if I'm being honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been to so I don't live in America, but when I have been there, I've only been to California and Texas. Those are the places that I have visited.
Okay, well, two of the biggest states, and I have family in California, and it's the magic state. It has the mountains and the ocean, and everything smells good. At least that's my take on California.
Stark difference from when you're in Texas and then going to California. It's like two different worlds. That's always to me so amazing about America, is like how different one place is from another. How different people are from one place to another, like lifestyle. It's just so huge.
It is. And there's a lot of cultural shifts, depending on where you are in the country, which makes it dynamic and fun and interesting and all the good stuff.
Yeah, it is. Which actually brings me to the topic of the podcast, Holly. For people who are not familiar with you, before I ask you all the questions that I have, can you tell us a little like a quick intro, what you do, what you guys do at the Federation of Independent Business, favorite color, I don't know, everything I got to know about you.
Sounds good. So I run the research center at the National Federation of Independent Business, and the organization is an organization that represents small businesses. So across the country in the US, across industries, we have about 300,000 members. So our members are small business owners. They're across the country, across industry. Most of them are employer businesses, but for the vast majority of them, they range between 5 to 10 employees. So we're talking small mom and pop Main Street businesses. So I always like to kind of give an illustration so people can kind of conceptualize who we're talking about. Your local restaurant, the auto repair shop, the laundromat, the hair salon, those type of business, the small manufacturer, those are the businesses who we typically represent. And we represent them on a federal level and also on a state level. So we have lobbyists here in Washington, D.C. We have lobbyists in all of the 50 state capitals, and we represent their interests on the things that matter to them most. So because we're not industry specific, it's general broad policy categories. So not surprising, the big one is taxes. Nobody likes paying taxes, but for small businesses, it's a confusing labyrinth of costs, whether it's on a federal level, state, local. And so that's one of the main areas of focus that we advocate for them. And then all the regulations that they have to deal with. We often talk about, because I often get asked, so what are the big regulations that they have to deal with? And oftentimes it's not a big regulation, it's the volume of regulations that they have to navigate through and make sure that they're in compliance so they don't get in trouble. So NFIB, we're an advocacy organization on those issues that impact them the most in the research center. And I've been in the research center for almost 25 years now. 20 years, very long time. And we survey small business owners about areas of business operations. So we ask them, how do they market their business? How do they pay employees? How do they find employees? How do they deal with vendors? But our flagship product is a monthly small business economic trend survey that we've been doing for 51 years. So before my time. And it's a monthly survey. We ask the same questions. And so we have this time series that's very interesting about how they see how their outlook on business conditions, what their single biggest problem is, and how they're operating. So if they're looking to expand employment, if they have unfilled job openings, if they expect sales to increase or decrease, if they're making capital expenditures, are they buying cars, land, equipment? Are they looking to borrow from their bank? And how much does all this cost? So we have a lot of interesting information related to small businesses. And it's always fantastic to talk about where they are, what they're doing. They are the dynamic part of our economy, which makes it just fun to talk about.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree. I feel like small businesses also tend to be the ones that are the most creative and more connected to society. I read this thing the other day that said that a lot of entrepreneurship is born in moments of deep recession or economic crises because people are kind of forced to start self-employing. And when you look at a lot of businesses that are born during those times, they seem to be providing more service to the communities that they're in than big businesses like, say, something like a Walmart would, because they live in these communities and they live in these societies, so they know, like, deep down what it is that they have been lacking or where those gaps are that need to be filled. And it happens with these small businesses, right? And I think that's, like, amazing to me. It's really interesting. It really shows how big of an impact the little grocery store down the corner can actually have.
Oh, absolutely. And you're spot on in that they're integrated into their community, they're integrated into their even neighborhoods. You know, the owner is often at the location of the business day in, day out. They see their neighbors, they see people in their community coming to, you know, to the restaurant or the hardware store. And so they're on the ground, super connected to you know, to the development or what's going on, and they adjust accordingly. So, as you said, when there's a recession, any type of economic disruption creates winners and losers. And so some don't make it, but some find market opportunities and fill those gaps. And they're finding it in their local community. And so everything, all these moving parts are hopefully strengthening the fabric of that community, employing those who are looking for a job, whether it's their first job, whether they're a teenager and they're just looking for some experience, or whether they're you know, someone who worked for a larger business and wants to transition into a new career. Small businesses are a great place to start in kind of gaining that experience. But also for small business owners. So a lot of small business owners, they start their business when they're a bit older, they have experience, they worked for a large employer, and for whatever reason, they're like, I think I can do a better job and have more independence doing it myself. And so they transition out and forge ahead on their own. And it's always fun to hear the stories, but also the stories of the business owners, but also stories of those working for business owners, small business owners, and their experience, because it's very different from a large firm. They get to see how it all works, you know, from top to bottom. They're in it. It's not, you know, there aren't layers and bureaucracies and things like that and paperwork. It's, you know, you see everything that happens for the most part. And that's a really unique perspective that's so interesting and often comes with a lot of great stories.
So I wanted to ask you, because I feel like I've seen there's a lot of, like, I would guess, small business owners here. So I think I told you I'm from El Salvador. A lot of people here, because, you know, like, obviously it's a third world country, there's like a big work crisis. A lot of people from lower income are always trying to become, like, I would say they're entrepreneurial.
Oh,
And
sure.
yeah, a lot of them you will see, like, if you walk down the street here, you will see people in bikes and they will have like carts and they'll be selling stuff that they buy from the supermarket, but it's like a sandwich and, you know, like instant coffee, and they'll sell it to you. And that's kind of like how they're making a living, right? Like there's like people walking around with ice cream carts and things like that. And if you go up to them and most of the time you ask these people like what brought you to like wanting to sell or like whatever, a lot of times it's like food stuff. They'll usually be like, well, you know, I was hungry and I need to make a living, and so like this like I couldn't like necessarily mass purchase things, so I just went to the supermarket and got things, and then I started selling them, and then I started moving. Like it's very like, I guess, like driven by common sense, right? What happens is that a lot of these people, you can kind of see their entrepreneurial spirit, but they stay with like this like sort of small way of doing these things because they don't know what scaling is. A lot of them come from places where they haven't had a lot of education, and then they don't understand business or how to like actually manage their money. And, you know, like a lot of them will literally just like make what they made for the day and then count that as like, okay, this is what I have for like food tomorrow. They're not thinking, yeah, it's not as I would say, like they're not thinking, oh, well, like profits and revenue and all of this. But it's really interesting because I feel like I've seen a lot of businesses who have a lot of potential for scaling or growing or becoming better, or, you know, like finding like fine tuning, and people who don't understand it because they come from backgrounds where they might not have had access to that. So that's why we have a lot of programs here to like try to help people understand that, because of how entrepreneurial I think, you know, you see them, but they kind of just need that boost. I'm wondering if you run into stories like this, if you run into people like this who have these little sort of like diamonds in the rough and have no idea, and if you have to walk them through like step by step what it is that they need to do to make more money, be better, grow more.
Absolutely. So it's interesting because those who start businesses kind of out of desperation, lack of opportunities, things like that. One of the reasons that it's often difficult for those folks to expand and scale up is that, they're in a situation where everything is immediate. So there isn't a lot of time to think through other opportunities, how to navigate into scaling up. It's day to day, as you said. They're in an indirect way. They are thinking about kind of profit margins and all this stuff, but in a not structured way where they can build on it. It's all immediate transactions, immediate paying the bills, immediately going to pay for food or housing or whatever they need to do. And that kind of churn or lack of time and foundation to then broaden it out in a meaningful way gets kind of lost to the opportunities that might be there. And so that's one of the frustrations, is how do you connect with business owners that obviously are entrepreneurial, obviously have what it takes to make it day to day, and can probably succeed in building out their business, but don't have either the skill set or the time or the mentoring to do that. So in the US, we have a few programs that are really helpful, one of which is SCORE, and it's a mentoring program that's out of the Small Business Administration. And what they do is they talk to small business owners, match them up with somebody who either was a small business owner or has skills in the areas that they're looking to learn from. And it's one-on-one matching. And they pair them up so that they can move forward and, either expand their business or make it more profitable in the scale that it is. And so one of the areas, I've certainly talked to business owners where they've started, they don't know how to move forward. Most people, don't go to business school and get their MBA or anything like that. They just start out with an idea. It was maybe from a hobby. Maybe it was from, you just were desperate to start making money somehow, and this is what you kind of knew how to do. And so you just kept doing it and started making money. Whether it's kind of food carting, that type of enterprise, or really anything else, cutting somebody's hair in your home bathroom or in the kitchen, and turning it into something. But it's a pretty significant barrier getting from that, kind of entry level entrepreneurship to something more more profitable, more sustainable. And that takes a lot of work, because it's the person who's doing it who has to learn all this new stuff to kind of reimagine what they're doing. It takes time and it takes a lot of energy. And I commend anybody who can figure that out and do it without a formal education that is kind of built into what they know and their skill set, that can just figure it out on their own. And for most people, it takes a lot more to it, the mentoring, the talking to others who have kind of succeeded in the way that you want to move towards. That's always really helpful too. So it is difficult because, as I said, it's the person who's doing it who doesn't have a lot of time, who has to get the skill set, figure it out, have the energy, and move forward with it themselves. Because it's a very isolating solo
Journey.
Exactly. Yeah. Journey of moving forward with it, and it can be very daunting.
Another question, I think that's so interesting, because another question that I had was regarding, I guess we're kind of talking about like current challenges that small business owners are facing, right? And I think another one that I see is also is I think within groups that are a little bit older that are starting businesses, where they struggle to adapt to the business world now. And not necessarily, I would say, the business world, because I don't think a lot of these business owners are like, joining Wall Street, but I mean like just adapting to the way that the modern world works.
Social media,
Yeah,
all of that.
social media. I'm
50-year-old to
immediately thinking. I'm thinking of this woman who I met that was trying to start, like, I think it was like a crocheting business or something like that. She was making things, and she wanted to sell them, and she was putting up flyers on the street, and she was getting no customers. And then when she ended up getting like a few, everyone wanted it to get delivered, right? Like e-commerce was huge, and so like people are asking for this. Like, I don't want to go pick it up. Like, I don't want to go to your house. Can you please just meet me? Can you please just like send it to me? Like with like you can send packages via Uber nowadays. So she was like, just Uber it. Like people were just like, and like this woman was so overwhelmed because she was like, if I pay for an Uber, then I'm losing all of the profit, like blah blah blah. And like she struggled so much with it. And I remember like hearing the story, and it was I never met her. It was my friend who was telling me about it. And I was like, I feel like she needs to sort of adapt to how the world works right now, because I feel like for her, I would have probably started some kind of like social media account, sold through social media, and done like shipping and stuff. Because that's just how a lot of small businesses like hers operate, and how people expect it to operate. Right. And she was struggling a lot with it because she was also very much like, I don't do social media. I hate those damn cell phones type of person.
Oh
And
no.
so, like, I think it can be really sad for someone like that to have to like be forced to do something that they don't understand, that they don't agree with, because that's the way that the world works. And I'm curious, if do you see that happen a lot with business owners who are just struggling so much to understand how things are, and to just sort of adapt, especially with how fast everything changes too?
Oh, absolutely. So that was a great example. Um, and I feel for her.
Me too.
It's really hard to keep up with the ways people find businesses, how they connect with business owners, what they want out of their purchasing experience. It was interesting. A friend of mine who owns a restaurant here in DC, she, when she started out, she was a cheese shop. She was a cheese shop, and then she started very small as kind of cafe style, and you could order cheese instead of just taking it home with you. And then she built it into a full-fledged restaurant. And at the beginning, she's like, okay, yeah, I'm a full-fledged restaurant, and people come in, order food. It's great food. That's what I'm selling. And she said, 20 years later, that is not at all what I'm selling anymore. I'm now selling an experience. It has to be an experience. And so it's the whole thing. It's the presentation. It's the social media connection with her customers. It is a 360 environment. And she said if she knew that this is what it was going to look like when she first started her restaurant, and if she were any older, it would be that much more difficult to adapt to what people's preferences are and how to use the new technology for marketing a business such as a restaurant or a crocheting company or anything. It's really hard. So it's whether it depends on who your audience is, who your natural customer base is. If your natural customer base are older folks that also don't understand technology and they want the simpler form of communication, that's great. If you want anything broader than that, you better figure it out, or else it's not going to work all that well. But for some small business owners, when we ask about technological advancements, how they adopt new technologies into their business, for a lot of them, it's, we just kind of go with what the industry standard is, and we purchase new equipment, we become more efficient in our operations. progressively and all of that. And some are like, that's for the next owner to figure out. I don't want any part of that. I don't want to try to figure it out. We have enough sales and I'm doing well enough to coast through until I retire. And that next person who has way more energy than I do can go figure out how to market on TikTok and how to sell on different platforms and how to accept payment in different modes of payment systems. It's from beginning to end how you connect with customers, whether it's marketing, whether it's payment transaction, whether it's being able to buy off a website. All of that is meaningful, and it's a challenge, especially for those older small business owners. I mean, it's hard for me to catch up, and so I feel for them in having to catch up in all the different ways of their operating their business. That technology is transforming how we do everything.
It is. I mean, I'm young, and I also just like, I go on TikTok one day and I don't know what they're talking about anymore.
Oh, I really have no idea what they're talking about anymore.
Like, it's hard for me, and I feel like I'm kind of in the loop. And I can't imagine because I feel like I didn't feel that like things were moving so quickly before. When I was maybe like a teen, I've always like, I grew up with social media, but I don't think that I remember a time where it was so fast paced, like to the point that I think it's as fast paced as it's ever been. And it's probably just going to get even faster. So it's harder for everyone, I think.
Oh, no kidding. It is one of those you just really have to push yourself to keep up and keep engaged, or else it all flies by you. And then pretty soon you don't know what's happening or how to pay for anything or where your friends are on social media. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. It is always a chase.
I'm curious if within younger people you see like people who are either aspiring business owners or small business owners that are partaking in things that are maybe not going to be as lucrative. I feel like I've noticed that because of that specifically, social media has started like a lot of micro trends, specifically around purchases, like local people. So I don't know if you saw this, but like Stanley Cups were huge last year. Everybody was buying Stanley Cups. Yeah. And right now, I think the new fad is Labubus, which are these little plushies that you buy. They're blind boxes.
I have not heard of that.
No, yeah, they're huge with Gen Z. They're huge. People are going out to buy them. They're these little keychains, and they're blind boxes. And there's this store called Pop Mart that sells a lot of them, and they're selling out like a lot of these blind boxes. And they have like, I think they have like different types. One of them is called Labubu, which is the most popular. Everybody's buying them, and it's created this sort of like new fad of everyone wanting them. And I've seen a lot of like resellers, a lot of business people trying to like profit out of it because it's become so popular, and they're collectible. So people are always chasing like specific ones, and because they're blind boxes, you also don't know what you're going to get. So like, it's like a whole world that's built around it.
So it's an experience. It's one of those
they sell the experience for sure.
Has turned into experience.
The thing is that they're very cute, but my concern is that this is something that's going to eventually go away the same way that the Stanley Cup did. What happens or what I've noticed, this is not backed up by research, but I think it's just things that I've noticed, is that like when the Stanley Cup thing happened, a lot of small businesses popped up that were selling accessories for them, or that were selling similar cups because they wanted to be competitors. And now with these Labubus trend, a lot of businesses are popping up that are either resellers, they're selling like bootleg versions, or they're selling accessories or whatever. And I wonder all of the time when I see this is, what is going to happen to these businesses when these trends go away? Because eventually they go away, and then I'm pretty sure that some people will stay because they genuinely like it, but the amount of people purchasing these things is not going to be as high, right? It's going to lower significantly, and it's going to affect these small business owners the most, because I'm pretty sure like Pop Mart, the big business who's selling this, is going to be just fine. But what happens to small business owners is always what I wonder. And I always think, I ask myself, is it worth it to start a business like this if it's going to, like, the longevity is so short?
Yeah. It's so it's one of those areas where for those who start businesses that are kind of riding the wave of a trend,
Yeah.
they're good at finding the trend. And so many of them just continue on. So they ride that wave of a trend, they catch the next wave, they catch the next wave, and they just adapt to whatever it is. And they're just creative in that context. Some of them just do it for a period of time as a side job and they make a bunch of money and they're like, okay, and now I'm just going to go be an employee. And that was fun. And, you know, we did it. And so it's because there are so many opportunities, there are so many people who sell or have a, you know, have a small business that makes money that might not be a more structured, established entity, but they do it for a period of time, go out of it, come back, or just stay out of it permanently. It's such a dynamic ecosystem of commerce in the small business space. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it flexible for people to go in, make some money, come out, be an employee, do both at the same time, which we've seen since COVID, or just keep moving keep moving along with the different waves of entrepreneurism that they're able to connect with. So the other example that I often have is, you know, you start off with a restaurant that sells, you know, Mexican food. And you realize that the demographic isn't there for Mexican food, but it seems like the Italian restaurant down the street's doing pretty well. And you can figure out how maybe to do that better. And so switch over the tablecloths and get a new chef and turn it into an Italian restaurant. And so, you know, for some owners, it's not the exact thing that they started off with. It's, I want to just have independence in making my own money, however I can figure that out. And so that makes it more flexible. They're able to adapt. Some of them, as I mentioned, and in the situation that you said, you know, sometimes it's you hit the wave and then you're done, and that's it. And then you go on to be an employee of somebody else or, you know, do something else. But it's, you know, there's just millions of people who are coming in and out of this universe of entrepreneurship, of making money and latching onto an idea or an opportunity and kind of going with however that leads them. And so it's always, it's always in flux. It's always transitioning. And for some, it turns into a stable thing. For some, it's a one-time event. For some, it's a one-time event that turns into many events.
No, I think like I actually I have seen some of them that have thrived because they adapted to whatever came next, right? Like, so like I've seen those businesses that start off with like riding a wave of something, and then it's like, you know, like accessories for your Stanley Cup, and then it's, well, you know, it's accessories for everything, and then yeah, all of a sudden,
marketing skills.
yeah, and I commend that because I think it's, you know, that is a skill that I think a lot of people don't have, which is just being able to adapt, being able to change and grow with a market. I wish all small business owners the best. I think that they need to, you know, always thrive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's just fascinating to meet all the small business owners that I can, to hear their stories, how they started out, what they thought at the beginning of what they were going to do, and then what it turned out to be later on. And it's just creating the environment wherever they are to allow for those to make a go of it and have it be, you know, kind of an easy point of entry to figure it out And if it works, wonderful. If it doesn't, easy way to get out of it and move on to something else. But yes, it's a very dynamic area of our economy, and it's just fun to watch.
Definitely. I think that's also a great note to end the podcast on, Holly. It's been so great to have you today. We had such a great conversation. But before we stop, I do want to give you the space to tell people where they can find you. If anybody wants to learn more about you, about what you do, if there's a small business owner that needs advice, floor is yours.
Absolutely. So you can find all what we have available in the Research Center or just information about the National Federation of Independent Business at nfib.com. And we have a lot of information and resources for small business owners to think through how they might want to scale up, or just ways to adopt new technologies into their business, or just see what every other, what the general consensus in their industry is in how they're operating their business. So a lot of good information. It's nfib.com.
Amazing. I will be adding the links to this on the description of this video. And thank you so much for being here, Holly. You guys subscribe, follow us, interact with the video. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
You've been listening to Unified Purpose, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.